What's going on, fantasy football fans? I'm your host, Hussein the Brain, and you're watching The Couch. It feels good to be back. What's that smell? It keeps getting stronger. That's the smell of fantasy football. And the fantasy football season is right around the corner. In this video, we're going to be talking about handcuffs. So what are handcuffs? A handcuff is when you draft an elite player and you take out, let's say, an insurance policy on that player by drafting his handcuff, which is his backup. So if that elite player were to go down in an injury, or he performed terribly, or a mishap happened, he got suspended, whatever the case may be, you have his backup and you can just plug him in right away, right when the elite player goes down. And that's what a handcuff is. In this video, I'm going to reveal my top 10 handcuffs for the 2015 draft, as well as some more additional people that could be considered handcuffs that you may want to consider in deep leagues. And we'll get a little bit creative at the end and mix some ideas around, you'll see. So let's go right into my top 10 list. Now let's be realistic here. In this list, most of these guys you're not going to want a handcuff, but some of these guys will be beneficial for you to get their backup. And some guys, man, they are must handcuffs. Now, the one guy that is absolute 100% a player that you must handcuff is Jamaal Charles. Now, you draft Knile Davis. I feel like if Jamaal Charles goes down, you can replace him with Knile Davis, who's on your bench. You drafted in the late rounds, and you won't miss a beat. So that's one guy that is a must handcuff. If you draft Charles in just about every league, I'm talking pretty much 100% of leagues, you need to target Knile Davis. Number 2 may be a little bit surprising here, but Eddie Lacy. I put him as number 2 because James Starks is a clear-cut backup to him. Number 1, Eddie Lacy. Number 2, James Starks is clear-cut. There's some rumors that Eddie Lacy may be getting a few less rush attempts. You know, people still think he's going to be in the lineup, the main guy, the goal line back, you know, pretty much every down back. And he's going to be catching a lot of passes from Rodgers. So, I mean, he's still a stud, but, you know, James Starks, if Lacy were to go down, James Starks right there. I think we all know the Todd Gurley, Trey Mason situation. Gurley may not play the first few games. After that, he may even be eased into the lineup. Trey Mason was a beast last year. So it's safe to say Trey Mason's a great running back for your fantasy team in the first 8 games of the season. That's the first half of the season. Le'Veon Bell is facing a suspension. It's looking to be 3 games if it does not get reduced. And his backup is DeAngelo Williams. That's not 100% clear cut, but he's pretty much going to be his backup. There's not too much competition here. You know, Coach Tomlin is trying out other players, other running backs to be the RB2 over there in Pittsburgh. But, you know, most people are thinking DeAngelo Williams is going to be the clear-cut number 2 once the season starts. But if the preseason proves otherwise and we see someone else be the RB2, man, that's the guy you want to handcuff. Now, you know, this list can change during the preseason. If the RB2 fluxes, and you'll see that in my next guy, Arian Foster, if the RB2 changes, that's the guy you want to draft. I mean, some people are drafting right now in July, and some people will be drafting very early in September. So it's going to change on who you handcuff, especially in those deep rounds, the players you pick, that will change. Now, Foster, he is a must handcuff. I mean, I really want to put this guy number 2 on my list, but we're not sure if Alfred Blue is the clear-cut backup to Foster. Now, they got Chris Polk, and, you know, I think Alfred Blue will be the RB2 over there in Houston, but he could be also splitting carries with Chris Polk and maybe even somebody else there. So I put a question mark on this list. So, you know, Foster, that's why Foster is not being drafted in the first round in a lot of leagues, because of his injury risk. I mean, he is a very injury-prone running back. Let's just put it how it is. If you draft Andre Ellington and you're in a deep league, David Johnson's a guy to draft. DeMarco Murray. Now, some people reach for this guy, I mean, this year, the top 10, top 15, even top 20 players picked is going to be so much different. It's going to fluctuate. You'll see Aaron Rodgers go very early, then you'll see Aaron Rodgers go very late. You know, same thing with Marshawn Lynch or Matt Forte. You never know where anyone's going. So if you draft some of these players like DeMarco Murray, for instance, very early, targeting Ryan Matthews will be more important. So if you drafted DeMarco Murray as a top 7 pick, you may want to seriously target Ryan Matthews because DeMarco Murray is going to be a central part of your team. Jonathan Stewart, he's a guy you can get for cheap in the later rounds, and you may want to back him up with Artis Payne. I think that's a really good move right there. I think both players have great value. LaShawn McCoy, Fred Jackson's going to likely be the backup. You know, he's getting really old. He's 34 years old, I believe. And, you know, in PPR leagues, he's going to be really valuable. Let's see in preseason who is the RB2. If it's Fred Jackson, that's a good handcuff. And CJ Anderson, I really like this guy this year. You can handcuff him with Monte Ball. Now we're kind of stretching here. You know, you don't want to handcuff every player, but you know, in deep leagues, all these depend on where you are. You know, if you're in a deeper league, if you pick this guy before his average draft position, before people are taking him, then that handcuff is going to be more valuable. Just an example, you know, you're not going to do this, but if you did pick CJ Anderson as a top 3 pick, you would definitely want to target Monte Ball as a handcuff, especially in a deep league. Now let's look at some more handcuffs. A lot of these handcuffs are stretches. You probably don't want to do this. I'm having a little bit fun with this list here, but if you are in a very deep league, these 20-round leagues are getting more and more popular. It's usually 12-man, 20 rounds. That's considered a deep league, is not the number of owners that's in it, but the number of players that's being drafted. So if you're in a 20-round league, a deep league, and some of these apply to PPR only leagues, then you may want to consider targeting some of these handcuffs. Now, some of these guys aren't even considered handcuffs. They're just considered mid-round or late-round value picks, like Roy Hello. I wouldn't consider him a handcuff per se, but in a PPR league, I think he's going to be a steal. In some leagues, people are going to forget about him. He's going to be slept on. I like Roy Hello. So Roy Hello could be considered more of a sleeper than a handcuff. Dan Herron, another guy, is being slept on. I mean, you might be able to sneak by and draft this guy in one of the late rounds after a kicker like Stephen Gostkowski gets drafted. So I like that. That's a good value pick right there. And Frank Gore is getting up there in age. People are liking David Cobb. That's not necessarily really a sneaky pick. And Bishop Sankey, it's not that Bishop Sankey is very injury prone like a lot of these guys on my list, but it's that was very horrific in 2014. So if he's very horrific this year again, you got David Cobb. Marshawn Lynch, this guy's been just used the past few years. That whole offense goes through him. So Christian Michael and Robert Turbin, you know, they're going to be battling it out. Right now, Turbin has an injury. So Christian Michael is going to get a lot of looks right now in preseason. So this is definitely worth a battle to look at who's RB2 on the Seahawks. That's going to be a really valuable pick right there. And a late round flyer, possibly. If you pick Lamar Miller early, Adrian Peterson, Carlos Hyde, and you're in a PPR league, or if you pick Justin Forsett, a guy who I think is being slept on in a lot of leagues, then those are some handcuffs you may want to consider as well. But, you know, I probably wouldn't handcuff these guys if it was me either. I just wanted to, you know, include all the possible handcuffs in this list. Now I'm really having fun with this last list here. I call it Getting Creative Here. These guys are hardly considered quote-unquote handcuffs. Dante Moncrief, I see a lot of people like him in this list. You got T.Y. Hilton, Andre Johnson, one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback this year, Andrew Luck throwing the ball. If Andre Johnson, he's 34 years old, goes down, or T.Y. Hilton suffers some kind of injury, you got Dante Moncrief, he's going to beast. Nick Toon, same thing. I mean, you can draft him. You can draft any of these, most of these guys on this list, especially Moncrief, without drafting another Colts receiver, of course. And same thing with Nick Toon. That's a great deep league flyer pickup. You know, your wide receiver 6 or something in a deep league, especially PPR. But yeah, if you draft Brandon Cooks as your wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2, and you know it's a 20-round league, you might want to draft Nick Toon as a quote-unquote handcuff. Virgil Green to Owen Daniels. You know, Gary Kubiak's the coach over there on the Broncos. They might use some 2 tight end sets, and if Owen Daniels gets hurt, boom, you got Virgil Green. Now that's a deep sleeper right there. That's a stretch, of course. Cody Latimer, some leagues really like this guy. I mean, he's an interesting guy right there. He's likely going to be the wide receiver 3 on the Broncos. And, you know, if you got Demaryius Thomas or Emmanuel Sanders, right there, one of them gets hurt, Cody Latimer should beast as well. Devontae Adams, this is a guy I like right here because you got Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball. We know the 2 stud receivers over there, Randall Cobb, Jordy Nelson. Tight ends, not so much. Not a lot of people like the tight ends over there in Green Bay. So we know that Rodgers doesn't really use a lot of tight ends, and if he does, it's not just one tight end he's been sticking to. So I like Devontae Adams. He's not really, you know, he doesn't even need to be on this list. He's just a sleeper wide receiver, basically. Not, of course, not considered a handcuff by anybody, really, except me in my Getting Creative Here list. And that about wraps up this video. Make sure you guys check out the Handcuffs song. That's right, I busted a rap about 2015 handcuffs, so make sure you watch that video. Also, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on social media at Fantasy Couch. Check out the website fantasycouch.com. We'll be having a lot more videos coming real soon, including 2015 draft advice. We're going to be doing daily leagues, including how to play, and weekly videos. So we're going to be coming out with a lot more videos this year. And I'll see you guys on the next one.